Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 206 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have my friend Jennifer Chandler on the podcast. Jennifer and I went to law school together. She has a criminal defense practice in Mooresville, is an absolute advocate for her clients, loves every part of being a criminal defense attorney, is an incredibly enthusiastic person. After our conversation, I felt a little bit like I needed to take a depressant just to bring me back down to kind of like normal levels. Jennifer brings the energy, wildly entertaining and incredibly insightful in terms of how to improve your criminal defense practice, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, Jennifer, I'm pumped. I feel like my energy level here is like starting to really go up from just our brief conversation here, building into the episode. So I'm excited. I don't know where we're gonna end up today, but I'm pumped to have you on the show. Thanks very much.
I'm excited to be here.
It's gonna be a blast. But we gotta have like a shared law school experience. So, tell me in terms of what led down the path of law school, like to becoming a lawyer, and then ultimately into the crazy world of criminal defense. Let's start with that journey.
So law school was 3 years and med school was 8, 9. Just kidding. Yeah, that actually contemplated that. And then now I look back at that and I go, what the heck was I thinking? The body doesn't change. Like, the law is changing every day. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? I'm beating my head every day thinking about that.
That's awesome.
But my heart has always been in making the world better, more equal. I think that I don't completely understand the inequalities because I don't think I face all of them. I also, though, understand my perspectives are unique in that my mom was a first generation. She came over on a boat from Ireland, and
that's crazy.
My grandfather, so he ended up being at UNC Asheville. He was a soccer coach. He was also an engineer. Warren Wilson College. He was also a soccer coach there. My grandmother was a librarian on Warren Wilson's College. But the big thing is that my that side of the family was very, I don't like to use the term liberal versus conservative, but they were very open-minded. And so Warren Wilson College is where, my family, that side of the family, grew up. And so a lot of foreign students were brought over. And so when my mom went to school at Owen, whenever she says, when she was going to school, whenever they would have anybody of color, as they would say, they always grouped them up with my mom because, she was so used to being around diverse people because that's how my family grew up on that side.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather and grandmother were very open-minded and taught me to be that way. And my grandmother was actually a missionary in China. And
that's wild.
Yeah, well, you want wild. My grandmother was a missionary in China, and my grandfather was in the Royal Air Force. He happened to be stationed in Hong Kong. When she was a missionary in China, she went to go get her tooth worked on and happened to be in Hong Kong, and they met. And within 2 weeks, they were married. And he thought she was like this rich American girl, and she thought, oh, rich, like royal, I don't know, he's from the,
anybody with that accent sounds rich. Anybody that's got the British accent, you're like, man, this guy's loaded.
I've never heard rubbish so much in my life. And so it was wild growing up around this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But my grandfather instilled in me this passion of making the world better. If you see any type of disparity, if you see any wrong, you step in and you do something about it and you make it better. And that your life isn't about making everything about you.
Yeah.
And your purpose is about making society better, making things more equal. And so that was instilled in me when I was young.
That's
And,
awesome.
and I think that has definitely driven me and is a passion that I have because I will still go to, they have a soccer, I guess, at UNC Asheville. They have a scholarship under my grandfather's name. And then they also have a building, which is a green building, of course, because as you know, in law school, they called me hippie girl. So it kind of goes with it. But it kind of, goes along the same lines that was what was very important to me growing up.
Yes.
And so that is what has continued to be important to me.
Yeah, I think that's such a big deal. I feel like with criminal defense, generally speaking, and again, I mean, obviously we kind of haven't got there in terms of the journey on your particular path, but I feel like with that mindset of being able to kind of stand up for people's rights, there really is no greater platform than that. And I've kind of routinely used this thought process of like basically the one kind of major block in the government's bulldozing path is comedians and criminal defense lawyers. Like this is the group of people that really get to stand up for individual freedoms and rights, and obviously through very different means. Although criminal defense can be pretty comical at times, so maybe there's like some shared items there, but
it's sometimes it's just asinine, and you just have to like go, okay, I can't even believe that this is. I mean, because it's just crazy. Some of the stuff we see, and it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
And it just you go home and I was saying this today. I was like, Perry Mason wasn't real. Like I watched Perry Mason black and white growing up, and I was like, dang, he wins all the time, man. I always figure out who did it really, and it's for his client.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that's what it's gonna be like. And then I said, Law and Order is really the one that got it right, though. The TA always wins, and I was like, so we make fun of Law and Order because everybody's like, oh, Law and Order isn't like, it's never realistic, and I was like, well, it kind of is on that. But yeah, I mean, I always thought it was going to be like Perry Mason, dun, 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 and it's not your person. And, you start to realize that what's frustrating is a lot of times it is your person, but is it fair how they got there? And that's what a lot of times we're fighting about isn't whether or not your person did it. It's whether or not the officer did follow the rules, follow the Constitution, get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people judge you for that. And I'm like, why are you judging me?
Yeah.
What if it was you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody always has that imagination that, well, I'd never be in that circumstance, but it is funny because again, we were just talking about this before we got on the show, but I feel like most people would say that the protections under the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment are extremely important, regardless of what your, kind of ideological background is, that the protections that are afforded us under the constitutional amendments, maybe specifically Fifth and Sixth, are like what makes this country amazing. And yet at the same time, there's always like this question mark of like, well, and I would say this is from all people as well, like regardless of what their ideology is, it's like, well, yeah, but bad people should go to jail, even if the officer didn't follow the Constitution. It's like, well, no, like the Constitution should be, more important than, statutory law, whatever the local ordinance that is being argued was violated is. It's like, that's the bedrock of all laws. Like that should be the most important thing. And I feel like that's really where criminal defense lawyers have if the Constitution gets pushed to the wayside, there's pretty little left in terms of what we stand for. And that's the beauty to me of being a criminal defense lawyer is every day. It's like, what do you do? Well, in part, I get to go defend the Constitution every day. So
that's exactly what I say every day to myself when I get up. I go, okay, it's time to protect the Constitution and people's rights. And that's how I think of it.
Yeah.
And I think if we start to throw away rights and we say, well, it doesn't really matter because, the ends justify the means. What are we saying?
Yeah.
We're losing what we stand for. We lose everything that this country stands for because the reason we came here all started with that and stems from the British rule and that we didn't want this tyranny. And so even when you go, I was actually looking back and I wish I could think of it right now. Was it the Fifth Amendment? I was going back to whether or not Sixth Amendment and where all of it came from and how I wanted to argue it in court. And I was trying to decide how I wanted to argue it. And I looked up where it originated from. And it originated back in Britain. And it was all about that you should be able to look into the eyes of your accuser. Like that Sixth Amendment is all about that. And that's where it originated from. It is looking to your eyes of your accuser. And so I wanted to be able to argue that into the court. And so what I do a lot of times when I'm looking at how I'm going to argue something is I go back to the original. Like, why do we start here?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's really going on about this? Because, for instance, we forget, I think it was 60 years ago, I actually argued this last year because, we start to go on about, Brady and like our rights under Brady, but it's a 60-year-old case. And
that's crazy. That has not registered to me recently when I've argued that as an issue.
I went back and I read it and I was like, you know what? This case isn't even about exculpatory evidence. Like if you go back and read it, it's about two people and a man shot and there's co-defendants. And Brady says, hey, I was there. This dude was shot, but I didn't shoot him. He just wants mitigation. That's it. It isn't about whether or not he did it or didn't do it. And that was something I argued to a superior court judge. I said, Your Honor, we go back and we argue Brady, and we exculpatory. But that isn't even what it was really about. And if we focused on the fact that it's not simply just about exculpatory, it is even about mitigation and sentencing.
Yeah.
That points out how important it is that if it is exculpatory.
Yes.
So, I go back a lot of times and read, where did this start? Where did this begin? Because knowing where, it originated a lot of times tells you where you really can make your arguments for now. And what the implications are and why it started and how you need to make your arguments for the facts that you have in your case now. And I know the judges a lot of times appreciate that
yes,
you've
I bet. Yeah.
And you said, you know what, we forget about what this is really about. And I actually had one the other day, a .08, and I'm not going to brag about myself, but I had a .08 and I said,
brag away.
No. But I will say this. I said, Your Honor, we get so caught up on .08, on numbers, and we forget they're just numbers.
Yeah.
A .08 of one person is, falling down drunk, like silly drunk. .08 on another person walking around sober and fine. One person's impaired, the other's not.
Yeah.
That's not guilt. And we forget that under Nairn. And a lot of us just walk away and we go, well, it's a .08 and that's guilty. And we forget to argue Nairn and to argue that.
Yes.
And we should.
We should. Yeah.
And it's
And I would say, just to butt in for a second, like I
yeah.
would say that you should argue that even if you know it's a loser, um, depending on the judge. I mean, if you know this is not going to be a winning argument, just simply because you're conceding the issue if you don't argue it. So the less argumentation there is on it, the attorney that comes into the courtroom with a great Neyron case, like with just this amazing, kind of lack of appreciable impairment signs and indicators, and it's a .09 or whatever it might be, that has this really powerful case to argue on that front, is at a tremendous disadvantage if, that person's colleagues in the bar have never argued that issue. And the reason why is that now the judge has no like kind of meaningful way. It sounds like, well, this is some crazy argument that's being made out of left field. Like this is just a desperate attempt to try to get a case to go away. And again, I understand that, time is valuable, and sometimes it can just feel like you're just wasting your breath, depending on the judge and circumstances. But at the same time, it's kind of like we need, as a defense bar, to push good issues at all levels, because otherwise, when somebody does push that good issue with the right factual pattern, the maybe perfect factual pattern, that judge has no idea like where this is coming from. And I'd say that's one of the more frequently like left off the radar type of situations in district court.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like to argue that the officers like to argue, oh, well, they didn't do the fields or they didn't do that. And I like to argue, well, they didn't refuse to do them.
Yeah.
And that I think we forget to point out is that, well, you didn't do them.
Yeah.
And they refuse. How they try to narrate or they try to, I don't know. The officers really, really do try to put it in words like they want it. And so I go, that's not the right words.
Yeah. I have a situation like that coming up where it's at a checkpoint. They don't do the walk and turn in the one leg stand because it wasn't an ideal location. It's like, you guys picked this. This is a sobriety checkpoint. Like, why would you not pick a place where you could do field sobriety tests? It's like this. It's not even you don't have to move anywhere. So yeah, I mean, I
would be like, and how long did you have to set up this checkpoint? And you did a checkpoint plan when?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like what?
It's crazy.
But yeah, so that I think though, if I could tell newer attorneys anything, it would be watch videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Watch video. If there's 5 videos, I'm sorry, you got to watch all 5 videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had incidents where officers have taken handcuffs off. I've had incidents where I've had racist comments made. I've had so many times that if I had not sat down and watched the videos, even though it's so long.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, no offense. Well, Mooresville Police Department has a lot of police that show up at one incident. So it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But you got to watch all the videos because you don't know what you're going to see. I see a lot of times where they're having conversations on the side and they're like, that person's not impaired.
Yeah. Those are, I was just going to say that. I mean, those kind of officer to officer conversations are the most powerful evidence that you can get out of those videos. And it never comes at like necessarily, I mean, sometimes it comes, but a lot of times it does not come at a meaningful point in the investigation. So that's why watching all the footage is so important, because if you're just watching just for the field sobriety test or for the rights advisement or breath test at the jail or wherever they're doing that, you're missing all of that like kind of downtime where officers are kind of like, basically bouncing off of one another. Hey, here's what I did on the field sobriety test. What are the next steps for this? Like, I mean, there's all kinds of great nuggets that come out of those officer to officer conversations.
Absolutely. And it's amazing what they'll say to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one thing I always tell people. I'm like, please just watch the videos. It's there. It really is. You just miss it sometimes when you don't go and watch it, unfortunately. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do is just
Yeah.
I don't always like to. I feel like we need more popcorn. Like we
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
uh,
No, I mean, I mean, it can be a time consuming process to watch all of that. And I mean, it is difficult. That's why, again, in terms of, going to bat for a DWI client, it's not a easy thing. I think that, regardless of like the complexity of the DWI laws themselves, just the evidence process can often be just a huge time commitment. So again, I think that's part of the kind of charge appropriately mindset is that you're going to be doing a lot of work if you're really going to bat for a client on these kind of cases.
yeah, and the DMV implications, which I deal with too, and it's
Yep.
just
Yeah.
a lot to
Yeah, it
put.
is a lot. Yes.
But
So
oh, yeah, sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no. I was just gonna say, kind of to I think I derailed you on the on the original question, but in
Yeah.
terms of just kind of like diving into criminal defense and then kind of like how your practice has evolved, what has that kind of looked like from that initial point in law school where you decided like what did that look like kind of turning towards criminal defense and then where did things go from that
Um,
standpoint?
well, I always knew I was going to do criminal defense, but
So that was from the time going into law school. That was the
yeah,
idea. Okay.
yeah. I mean, I had thought about environmental law, and then I took environmental law, and I fell asleep every time I was in environmental law class. I was like, this is the most boring thing I've ever taken. Oh, it was horrible. Um, and so that was like, I'm confirmed. I'm definitely criminal
Yeah,
defense.
criminal defense is exciting. You can say a
It's
lot of things about
exciting.
it, but it's exciting.
I
So,
loved it. I was I gotta say president Actual Innocence Project through a lot
oh,
of
that's awesome.
school, and I just loved it. And so I just knew that's what I was meant to do. And then my last year, well, our last summer before we ended law school, I was intern for the PD's office in MEC. They couldn't get rid of me. Like, are you going to leave? I was like, no, I'm going to be here every day. So my whole last year of law school, I would do trials and
Oh,
whatever
that's awesome.
I won a DWI.
That
And
is awesome.
they were like, you're the first intern to win a DWI.
That's
It's
awesome.
just because I watched a video. I figured out that the officer had blue lighted and at 45 and said that the person was going slow. But then I looked up and realized that I was like, wait, I know that area. And I backtracked it on Google and figured out that it was actually a 35. And so he waited till it went to 45 and blue lighted. So it appeared that they were going slow.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just have to
Dang, that's
sometimes.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just, I love doing stuff like that. Just
Yeah,
to
that's awesome. Man, what an
detect them.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. So it was amazing. And I knew for sure, well, I thought I was going to end up with the public defender's office. Absolutely. That was what I was wanting to do. And then Bell and Bell hired me. I went in for an interview and they had like 100 applicants or something. And as soon as I walk out, I get a phone call from Hannah and George Bell. And it was like, you're hired. And I was like, okay, I thought I was going to get a job at the PDs. But yeah, I mean, what do? You're not like, okay, no, gonna wait for the PD's office. And so at that point, it turned into being at a private firm. And then George, about I would say two years later or so, George came to me and he said, Jen, I love and adore you, but you're not meant to be anybody's employee. And I mean that as nice as
Yeah,
possible.
that's awesome.
And I said, am I supposed to take that as a compliment? And he said, yes, yes. And we are still good friends. He's a Superior Court judge, which you probably know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's a wonderful human, and so is Hannah. And her father actually, Kim Zarin, is practicing, and we're good friends. And so, we all have a good relationship.
Yeah, that's cool that he was able to kind of identify that and have an open conversation like that. Cause I do think that it's rare. I mean, I think it's rare for somebody to really in that type of a supervisor role or however the employer role, be able to just kind of like, you know, shoot straight with people. And there's been a couple of people on the team here where I've kind of like had a similar conversation of like this, this isn't going to be the right fit because you've got this like entrepreneurial spirit or like just whatever the kind of reason is that it's like this is I can just tell that you're itching for more, and maybe this is like not the right fit. I mean, I think that is a huge deal, so that's awesome.
And we were such good friends. It was like, yeah, he almost, like with Hannah and him, it felt like family more. And I think that's a relationship I've had throughout. You know, you go to look at my relationships throughout any of the courthouses or any of the criminal defense bars. You go to Mecklenburg, you go to Union, you go to Gaston, you go to any of these counties. I always attempt to have a great relationship with the defense bar. And I think that is something to instill in any of the younger lawyers is the cockiness.
Yeah.
It's not cool. It's not cool at all. And treating clerks with respect, absolutely important.
Yeah. 100%.
They know more than you.
Yeah, they do.
and they can mess up your world.
Yeah,
like
they can. Yeah.
Thing is, like,
yeah.
I realized that very quickly. And do you know, Pammy was the one, she is now, she died, and I was so close to her, but I can tell you, I would text her in Mecklenburg, and if I messed something up at all, I could text her. Even if I'd left the courthouse, she'd fix it.
Yeah.
Let me fix that. And do you know the judges, when the judges were on the bench, they would look at Pammy and go, did I do that right? And she'd be like, no, you did that wrong. But let me,
and what a great humble judge to be able to ask that question, right? Instead of just being like, this is what I'm doing. And then, there's, again, maybe nobody around that's like, yeah, that's gonna come back. We're gonna have to do this 3 months down the road again, like, because it didn't get done right the first time. Like, I mean, that's such a great characteristic.
Never humble though, but Pammy would look at the judge and go, "That's not right." Pammy, she's like, "Well, sometimes they need to be told they're wrong." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow, I wasn't expecting that." But I realized at some point, I was walking out of courthouses a lot, upset that I lost. Yes. And I would realize, you know what? I knew better. Why didn't I just say it?
Yeah.
And I now, a lot of times, I'll go, you know what? Just say it. You know better. Better. Your Honor, respectfully, I would look at blah, blah, blah. And I go to the statute. I go to whatever it is, the case law or whatever it is on point. And I say, no, this is really what I've read, but you tell me if you're reading the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you could be humble about it in some way. But I hate walking out of a courthouse and going, I regret what just happened because I didn't say something. I know that we have to be as respectful as possible, but we also need to say what we're thinking and not have that feeling of regret when we do walk out. I didn't say this, I didn't mention this case, I didn't mention this statute, but I know I was right. And I have that feeling sometimes. I've started to lose that feeling because I just don't do it anymore. I just say it.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think it is hard to get to that point, but I've gotten to that point where there's been enough times that I've seen where I've been correct. And the other side or the judge goes, oh, wait, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But if we don't say anything, they'll never know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100% on that front. I think that there is you're just talking about, somebody that is cocky or arrogant, and that's like the wrong attitude. I mean, I 100% agree with that. I think humility in most situations is definitely like the best posture, but that doesn't eliminate confidence. Somebody can be confident and humble at the same time, and also, extremely passionate. I think that also can be, right along with those other traits. And I think in the courtroom, again, in particular, in district court, we kind of fall into this pattern. I think one of the beauties of being in district court is that you get to be in front of the same judges day after day. And so you get to kind of like predict a little bit about, how this judge might, kind of rule on this type of issue, what type of sentence this judge is going to give. But I think the downside of that is that there are times when we just anticipate that the judge is going to deny our motion, or that we anticipate the judge is going to rule in a particular way or not hear us out about this particular item in sentencing. And like you were just saying, it's like, just keep pushing the issues. Maybe that issue, maybe it doesn't change at all, but the worst that happens is that you wasted a little breath. Like that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, this like hits the judge a different way. The facts are slightly different in the judge's mind. And so I think that can be a handicap for us in district court, because we kind of are playing this constant game of, I've already seen this before, so I know how this plays out, as opposed to kind of trying it with like a fresh set of glasses on. Like, I mean, we gotta really continually push issues that are similar, because you can't change the fact that you're in front of the same bench, day in and day out all the time.
And yeah, you just don't want that feeling when you leave court that I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I could have done that differently. And we have that. And I think that's sometimes why we don't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Is, I could have done this, I could have done that, and I could have done this, and I need to stop doing that. And at some point I just had that rationalization in my head that stop doing that to yourself.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just say what you're thinking. I said, I still laugh about this. I had a .07, and I said to the judge, I was like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I said, and I got a not guilty, but it's like, just say what you're thinking. You don't have to, we're thinking, we don't have to be all, like, oh, I got to use this jargon. I got to use all, we're all we're here.
Yes.
Let's just say it.
Yeah.
And don't regret it when you walk out and go, oh, I didn't bring this up and I should have brought this up. Just say it, because that's what I do. I used to do that. I remember my first, second year, I'd be like, oh, why didn't I do that? I had it sitting right there, and I knew, and I had it laid out. And I've now gotten to a point where I just literally just do bullet points, and I know that that's what I have to hit, and that's it. And I think, that's probably the best way to do it, so you don't get overwhelmed. But you've got to make sure that you're hitting everything you need to hit, so you don't regret when you walk out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's like I did everything that I knew I needed to do to win, so that when I go home, it wasn't me. And I have to rationalize it that way. I have to go, well, they made the wrong call.
Yeah, and I think that, again, just kind of going back into like the district court context, where maybe you've got an argument on PC and you're like, this isn't going to go my client's way in front of this particular judge. I still think, again, there is such a value in pushing those issues for a number of different reasons. You get practice from doing it. You commute. It's easier to show the client this isn't going to work by having the judge be like denied than to tell the client in the hallway, like, it just stinks, luck of the draw. Like, we're not going to win this issue. Like, it's easier to go to absolute war on behalf of your client and then have the judge deny your motion. When you go out into the hallway, instead of the client where you didn't argue because you're like, this just isn't going to work, and they're like, well, that's weird. Like, why is justice not going to be carried out in the courtroom? Versus like you walk out in the hallway after giving it all, laying it all on the line, and the client's like, man, you really went to bat for me. Like, I know that didn't go our way, but I mean, I appreciate all the energy that you put into that defense. Like, I can't believe the judge denied our motion. It's a very different feeling when you kind of like just concede defeat versus when you go into a battle you expect to lose and lose. Like, I mean, but you kind of give it your all. And again, like you're saying, in terms of, don't leave anything on the table. Again, if you've got a interesting or innovative argument, don't let the, kind of fear of looking silly in front of the court, or, saying something that you, again, maybe aren't 100% sure about, like, put that out there. Because, I mean, again, that generally speaking, the worst that can happen in those scenarios is the judge just doesn't buy into that position. But that's what we're there for.
Well, I mean, it's your first bite at the apple.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, get another one if you need
Yep.
it. So I do look at it that way. And I think that sometimes district court is that time. It's like, let me see what they got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what we're dealing with
Yeah.
first. And that is that opportunity. Not I know this was something that I wanted to point out based on what you had provided, and something that is I find to be very frustrating, especially with DWIs. And that a conversation that I have with my clients, I don't know if a lot of attorneys do, but with doing DWIs a lot and handling them, the politics of DWIs, it is highly frustrating. And having to tell clients that if this was any other case, you would have won.
Yeah.
But the politics are the politics, and that's what's happening here. And it is frustrating. And
Yes,
I
it
wish
is.
it didn't, I wish politics was not so intertwined in DWIs, but it is. And so I always try to have that conversation and counsel my clients beforehand, before trials, and let them know, listen, this isn't like your normal case. We need to have that conversation ahead of time so that they know realistically what the outcomes may or may not be. And that if this was an assault case, or if this was a different type of case, that it would be much more likely that it would be a successful outcome.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I do hate that. And I'll also point out on the same kind of subject that I disagree with our judicial system being partisan right now, and that I wish that we would go back the old way. But that being said, I just wanted to touch on that just a moment, because I don't think the Constitution is Republican or Democrat. I think the Constitution is the Constitution. Don't understand why we do that. But that being said, I just wanted to touch on that momentarily. That's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I 100% agree. I'm trying to remember exactly when that transition you're talking about on the ballot, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think
don't
it was
remember when
like
that was, but it was definitely
like
been
8
since
years
I've been,
ago, something like
since I've
that.
been voting. I mean, that's for sure been
Okay, so you're
the
not
tr
that old.
no, 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 no. I'm meaning it happened. It happened. Like there was a
Yeah,
time when I was voting when, there was
yeah,
no indication on the ballot. So it has to have been within the last like 15, 20 years that they changed that.
yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I still don't understand why we need it.
Yeah.
It's necessary, and I think that people just are basing their decisions on that, and it just is ridiculous to me, because we're getting judges that don't know what they're doing. They haven't practiced a day in a courtroom, that are making decisions about people's lives, and it's quite scary to watch. And I That's frustrating to me to watch that. And I do wish, I never said that I would prefer to have the governor, appoint. I would rather constituents make these decisions, but I would rather constituents make decisions that are not simply based on an RD.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that is where I was going with that, is watching the people that do get elected based on an RD. It doesn't seem to be that they have the courtroom experience at all. And
Well, I also think along that same lines, you kind of get less of a um, collection of judges in any specific county, because basically if it's a red county, you've got a bunch of red, Republican judges. If it's a blue county, you've got a bunch of Democrat judges. So you really kind of like eliminate the opportunity for more of like a melting pot of justice, and I do think that judges like us in the criminal defense bar, have, a lot of time in chambers, especially in like larger counties where you're seeing other judges, but even in smaller counties, you're bouncing in and out of courtrooms. You're somewhat feeding off of other people's thoughts and decisions in terms of how they're ruling on specific issues. And so the more that you kind of get like a smaller collection of ideas, because everybody's kind of on the same party lines, then I just think that that's a disadvantage. I mean, I think one of the reasons that the criminal defense, room, in the courthouse, or if you meet with your local criminal defense bar. One of the like amazing things about that is that people come from all different types of political and socioeconomic backgrounds, and are kind of bringing different ideas to the table, probably from those vantage points in terms of what might work well in the courtroom. And judges are some extent missing out on that, since this kind of more partisan slant. And so again, it just, to me, I feel like it really diminishes the ability for judges at the local level to kind of have more of like a melting pot of ideas.
That's true. I also am just a little frustrated by the system of, let me just run for this because I can win it, versus somebody doing it because they believe in it and it's something that they're passionate about, and wanting to help people. I always just thought that a judge would want to run, and that's the reason they want to be a judge, is to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was maybe I'm just too idealistic. Like I don't know, but that was,
I mean, you can tell a difference. I mean, you can tell a difference from a judge that is just like counting down the days until like retirement, and the judge that is up there that, like, day in and day out, like as they go through the bond calendar, is having a 10-minute conversation with every single person that's behind bars. And you're like, how can you possibly be this zeroed in when like this is your entire life? It's actually kind of like mind blowing sometimes. There's a specific judge here in Buncombe County, Julie Keppel, that is just like got this incredible, heart. I mean, like, just like really cares about, how people are being treated, and that they understand what they're, dealing with, and, diving into like mental health issues. And it's like, man, that's somebody that you are like, praying will be on the bench for a long time, just because it's like they're there because they really are using that position as a way of helping the community, right? Like at the individual level. So yeah, I 100% agree. Like there's a huge difference.
And we can see it. And I know anybody that is listening to this right now knows the names of the judges that we speak of. That we're not saying names, but we all know them. It's just, I wish there was a way that we could kind of filter that out. And it's unfortunate because I want to see more people on the bench that are more passionate about the position and what it really truly is about. You're there for the people. You're not there for yourself. And I think that is the concept that the person that takes that role should have. And unfortunately, when you're getting elected just based on an R or D, I don't know if that's really what you're doing. And I don't know if where you're coming from should be defining of where you're going and why you're being a judge. And I think you just putting an R or D by your name is probably not going to tell whether or not you're going to be a good judge and why you're doing running for judge. And you're correct. I mean, what we're going to end up with, and what we have ended up with in a lot of the counties that I practice in, are pretty much all the same judges. I mean, it's literally, because you have one party, it's all the same judges. You're not getting a diverse, type of judge at all. It's literally all the same judge type. And it would be nice, not everybody in the county is the same, and it just is very unfortunate that the system's set up this way. It really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, 100% agree with that. And I think that's definitely one of the, I've never really thought of that before, but that's probably one of the biggest changes in the judicial system since I've been a lawyer, is that change, because it really has changed the dynamic of the bench. I mean, it's just very, very different setup, different process for getting into that position, different campaigning strategy. I mean, there's just a lot of differences that come along with that I'm sure have had a huge impact, across the state and in every county on that same line.
Oh yeah. Well, the joke is that all the R's that were in MEC are never going to be elected again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's probably true. Yeah.
Well, all the R's that were in MEC changed to D's, and some of them got elected that didn't get called out. And then the ones that were D's and changed to R's, I think most of them didn't get elected. So who knows? But I make the joke that a lot of the R's that were in MEC were actually D's in most of the other counties. If you get what I'm saying, I know that's a lot, but but I mean, their mentality was a lot of, more open-mindedness that I would say really runs along the lines of a Democrat for a judge in another county.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, these judges that should be able to be elected will not be elected.
Yeah.
And I know I won't speak to exactly who it is, and I'm sure a lot of people know who I'm talking about. There is a judge that went from R to D that did get elected, and another judge that stayed D that didn't get elected over that judge. And I was kind of frustrated because I thought, well, the judge that stayed a D consistently could have called out that other judge, and he didn't. And my friend who was running for judge up here, I don't know how many people are going to hear this. She was called out for changing to an R and lost primarily for that reason. So, I mean, I think a lot of that's probably why I'm so disgruntled, not only because of that, but seeing also now the implications of what kind of judges we're having and how it is. I don't think it's a positive thing at all.
Yeah. Well, I think that the what you're just describing in terms of that, like, kind of gamesmanship of getting elected, it really, the whole reason for putting RD next to the name is just to, like, I would say the argument for this would be to let people know who they're voting for. Like, I mean, I think that would be one of the arguments for it. But then where you have people that are switching because they understand, well, the game has changed. Then now instead of each person being responsible for researching every judge on the ballot and kind of deciding, okay, well, I agree with the issues that this judge appears to be kind of, are important. It becomes, like this meaningless game. It's like,
that was my point. Like, it doesn't, and that is the frustration that I'm seeing in the whole system. And then I'm seeing the judicial system in our state just, it's deteriorating, and it's not a good thing. And I am hoping that at some point we realize that and we change the system and we go back to the way it was. It's unfortunate that it is at the point that it is now. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I didn't mean to say on that for so long.
Sorry. well, I guess along that same, like, lines, I mean, but kind of going around, like, a different avenue. I mean, is there other kind of big ticket items that are you see coming down the road that are kind of like going to change the landscape when it comes to criminal defense? Obviously, e-courts has been mentioned. I think I think that's been mentioned on every single one. So feel free to be brief on that specific issue, because I think it's just a
if I had a hammer to hit my head, I would. So I hate Odyssey. Let me count them. We don't have enough time in 24 hours to explain. There are some good things, but it cannot even, it can't, oh gosh. So essentially I try to do a pre-trial limited driving privilege, which we all know is 20 days. I couldn't get it signed and filed within 20 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's, so that, again, like, it just access to justice.
I don't know if anybody else sees a problem with that, but I kind of do.
My
client's like, so what's happening? And every day I'm like, well, I'm still waiting. And the first issue was I was advised that I needed a DL 123, which I was like, I don't need a DL 123. So then they have to send it back to a different portal. So this portal's floating about, and then somebody else goes to another portal, and then it has to go to the judge's portal, then it has to go to the clerk's portal, and then the portal has to go up. And I'm like, this is the most useless system. I don't understand this. And so I sent a nicely worded email to maybe one of the judges about how I thought the system was horrible and that I would probably circumvent the system the next time. I would probably just go get a wet signature and pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the thing. If we don't have clerks that are going to push these through, and we don't have judges that are going to sign them quickly and file them through Odyssey, it's not going to get done.
Yeah, that's my actually question. I kind of want to dive into that because as this is now getting expanded into other areas in the state, it's coming to Buncombe in July. It's getting ready to hit a lot of the kind of middle state counties here in about a month. One of the curiosity points that I'm trying to hear as I've heard people in Wake talk about it and Charlotte talk about it, it seems like a kind of poor setup in terms of how like let's say a document is moving through the system. Do you think that it's, I would assume that most judges are not like interested in spending time sitting in their office waiting for documents to appear in their queue. Like this is not like, kind of why they wanted to be judges in the first place, like was just to like wait for documents.
Do they have cocktails located in their office?
Yeah,
if they do, then maybe.
DA is the same way, but I'm just curious if this, to me, like I feel like the way that the system could become streamlined, if not become like, a powerful way to get stuff moving, from your own office all the way through the system would be if there was somebody kind of like at the ready as like their sole job. They're not answering phones. They're not like in the courtroom. They're not, is just like focused in on documents coming through the queue. And I just wonder how many DAs / clerks / judges have kind of set up a system where it's like, we need 100% like manpower, like focus on this part of the queue. Like, I'm just trying to figure out.
Can I say the word apathy?
Yeah.
Out enough. And I don't mean to bring up this and DMV at the same time, but I think I should probably go there. So what I've seen is the fact that us as attorneys, we get paid to get the limited driving privileges. We get paid to do these things with clients. They don't get paid directly to do these things for our clients. So it's not on their priority list. Yeah. So they get to it when they get to it. And that's kind of their mentality about it, which is a frustration for us, where used to, we could be like, okay, I'm going to get this done. And we could just go around and get it done. And now it's a wall of Odyssey that we can get through. And so it is frustrating. And that's kind of why I was going to circumvent it. But if you had a way that you had one person sitting there and they literally every time something got documented into Odyssey, it then triggered that to make someone else do something, then yes. But I know from a judge who is a visiting judge in Iredell, I won't say which one, that they were unaware that they had received like 50 Odyssey requests. Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah. And it was just sitting there for like 2 weeks. No idea. So all those people, all those attorneys or DAs or whatever it was, were sitting there waiting probably on orders for arrest to get signed, FTAs, whatever it may be, limited driving privileges. But that tells me there is not a system that is triggering the judges to know. Yeah. So if that's not happening, and then if the clerks don't have a trigger system, it's just sitting there. And so we can't, as attorneys, make it happen because I can tell you, I was going to the judge's office on the ninth floor, literally ringing the bell, going in there and going, hey, I need this sign. And I did that at least 3 times. And I still couldn't get it within 20 days.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but this system is not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the, everybody has kind of pointed that out with all kinds of different issues that are coming across. And it's just hard to kind of, put the finger on where there are areas to improve, because I think that we're stuck with the system. The system is here. And I mean, maybe there's an opportunity down the road.
I'm still in denial. Let me be in denial, because I don't know if I can deal with that right now. Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot to put on my plate. I don't know. Cause I'm still like, maybe we'll decide that the old way was better, because it seems to me that when something's not working, maybe you should just pack it up and go, hey, the old system seemed to work okay. Yeah. I know that everybody wants to go, oh, but it's, it's new and stuff. And I'm like, but the old stuff worked too.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to change it, but DMV, I have to touch on this. I don't know how many people out there are doing DMV stuff, but just realize that DMV moved to Rocky Mount. You probably know this. And so they hired all these new people, and all the people that were in Raleigh at the Raleigh location, which was the central location, they didn't go because they lived in Raleigh. And I don't know anybody that wants to go from Raleigh and move to Rocky Mount. If you do know anybody that wants to move to Rocky Mount, they could have a job at DMV. They're probably going to be more capable than the ones that are there now. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that I love the hearing officers. I want to mention how much I love DMV hearing officers again. Can I mention that again? So love them, but unfortunately, because the DMV location changed and it's all new people, they don't know what they're doing. So if you're putting in motions for appropriate relief, you're doing any of that, it's not going to get put in properly. You're going to have to do follow-ups because they don't know what they're doing there. So a lot of I've literally had this.
This is news to me, Jennifer. Yeah. So in terms of like compliance, is that kind of like what we're talking about? The team, like when the clerk is updating something in their system, this is where it's going on the DMV side of things, is to basically, this is not your local people working at each local DMV office with licenses and that type of thing. This is all kind of compliance and record update, that type of thing.
And so this is going to be dealing with a lot of your people that have suspensions, and they're getting notifications of revocations and suspensions. And so a lot of mistakes are being made right now.
Okay.
Just know, I just had one, which was hilarious. I shouldn't say it's hilarious, but it was, because I had to send it to a hearing officer. I was like, can this really be right? And they sent me, or the client, they sent notification that they were suspended. And I think it was a 6-month suspension for a high speed. And it was a year and a half ago. And I was like, well, that was nice to know that you got that suspension a year and a half ago. Yeah. And then they sent him a notification that because he had not advised them when he got reinstated of his license of that was him not telling the truth. So now he was in trouble for not telling the truth when he got his license reinstated. So he was in trouble for that. And so now he had to go deal with them on that front. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like
yeah, so that's wild.
But they're doing a lot of those that right now, where they're saying that it's fraud, that they didn't tell the truth when they reinstated their license because they didn't tell them about a speeding ticket. I've had, I think, 3 within a month where they're giving them notice and saying, you didn't tell us about this speeding ticket. And then they're going to say, you're going to get an effective suspension date of blah, blah, blah. And I had one client who was like, I didn't even know, like, it was this guy was a year and a half ago. He was like, I didn't even know that I was suspended. He never got the suspension letter for the suspension of a year and a half ago. So he was
Crazy.
suspended for 6 months and never even knew about it. And then they're mad at him for not telling about his 6 month suspension. And I was like, what? This is mind blowing. So I sent the letters, and they sent all the letters at the same time, by the way, so that he now can know what he didn't know, so that he can know it now. So that he, I was like, so I actually sent all the letters to a hearing officer. I was like, is this for real? And I won't say which one it was, but they were like, sounds about right.
That is crazy. Yeah, that's wild.
If you're getting any of this, yes, it's real. Okay. And yes, I don't want to say how bad DMV is, but it is that bad. So just note that if somebody calls and says DMV did this, and we normally used to say, okay, they're idiots. They're not idiots. It's probably true. So just go ahead. Just go ahead and have them email the letter over, and whatever you do, have them email the envelope. So have them save the envelopes, because the big thing is the envelope will tell the date that it was actually sent. Because what DMV is failing to do now, because I think they figured out what we were doing, is they don't put the dates at the top anymore in the letters.
That's interesting. I did notice that, but I wasn't sure what the reason was for that. So yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder what that would be.
Yeah.
So isn't that convenient? Because you were supposed to like mail that like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So just a heads up on that. I wanted to cover that because I told somebody that I was just going to quit my job and just become an expert on DMV, and just like literally show up for hearings and go, do you really think that driving while license revoked was actually provided notification on that date? Do you really think so? Yeah, because I actually had a driving while license revoked impaired the other day, and I got the officer on the stand, and the officer had no idea how to read a record. None. Couldn't read it. I asked him, I said, well, were they suspended on a DWI? I don't know. Like, no idea. None. I was like, you can't tell me by reading this record in front of you if the person you charged, right, sitting next to me, was suspended, which is what you charged him with, for being suspended for an impaired revocation. You can't tell me that date that you charged him for that if he was. You're looking at the record. He goes, no idea. They can't read it. They literally base it solely on DMV, which I always argue is hearsay anyway. And now, oh my gosh, is it even valid? I mean, Lord have mercy. It's probably not. I mean, it's DMV now, so it's probably not valid. But this was a case where it was the 30-day civil revocation, and it was actually 6 months later. So I argue that it was an NOL, and so it wasn't a driving while license revoked impaired. And this was the craziest argument. The DA said it's a driving while license revoked impaired, but they're treated as an NOL for guilty purposes, for sentencing. And I go, hold up, I'm sorry. So you charge differently than you sentence? When did that start?
That actually is the statute. Yeah. That's it's craziness.
How do you do that?
That was one I've had to have that conversation now with a couple of. I mean, it's a mess trying to walk the judge and the clerk through how to get that appropriately entered. And then like, I want to make sure that the DMV is getting the correct like sentencing outcome, because you don't want to have that DWLR impaired on there. But it's, I think it's charged as DWLR impaired, but then sentenced as something like failing to
it's like
something along those lines, and ultimately is treated basically as an NOL for the purposes of the sentencing outcome. But it's just like, I mean, trying to get the clerk to put that into the computer, and the judge to be like, well, how am I supposed to say? It's like, there's definitely been multiple like bench conferences where I'm like to the DA, we're going to have to approach on this, because otherwise this is not going to get entered the right way. So
exactly. Well, my point is this is like, if that's what you're saying to me, then I'm going to try every single one of them
Yeah.
because my thing is they're not guilty.
Yeah.
That's, and especially if an officer can't even read a driving record to tell me,
Yeah.
because the judge looks at the officer and goes, and I mean, I didn't even have to finish questioning. The judge is like, wait, so you're telling me at that point he hadn't even been convicted of a DWI? And he goes, I don't know. I can't read the record. I was like, oh my God. Like it was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
That should be considered hearsay because when the officer is saying, I read it from the computer.
Yep.
That was what I was basing it on. Then what else is that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, I objected to that, but then when an officer literally can't even read it off the record to tell you what it was, that's scary.
Plus, you don't really have any idea what they were looking at the time either. I mean, you don't know exactly whether that screen is a copy of the actual DMV driving record or what exactly they're basing that information on. So
well, the record that they looked at the screen that day could be completely different than the record that we have now.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, definitely based on what we got now for DMV.
Yeah.
So I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at this point, any of those that are driving while license revoked impaired that are outside the 30 days that are not paid, I'll probably just argue all of them.
Yeah.
And just say that I don't beyond a reasonable doubt, that's not guilty.
Yeah.
If you are failing to pay something, that shouldn't be guilt for the driving while license revoked impaired.
Yeah.
And then just argue the hearsay factor under the DMV. And then clearly, I don't think the officers can read driving records. So we're probably good on that front.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's stuff a lot of times even gets missed once they've paid the $100, because even though it shows like the suspension end date as whatever the date of payment was, as long as it's cleared on the driving record, most people looking at the driving record, DAs included, will kind of miss that part of things, because it's just like, well, there's no suspension from that time frame, like right, like it's just it doesn't show like a current indefinite or suspended status, so it's just like that. It does, I'm not seeing anything. I think that's
I've started with any of my FTCs. I don't have people pay them.
Yeah.
I started striking FTCs before I have them pay them now.
Yeah.
So that way, if there is anything that they have out there that is a moving violation during that FTC suspension, that they don't get suspended again.
Yeah.
Just in case. And so, I used to not do that. I used to be like, oh, just go ahead and pay it. But then I started to realize that if I have them pay it, and then I realized, oh no, there was a moving violation, that you have to do a motion for appropriate relief to reopen those.
Yeah.
That we can't do an FTA strike like we can, for the FTAs, we can go back after it's been closed. FTCs, you can't. You have to do MAR. So I've started doing that. If I see a FTC instead of an FTA, I say, FTC, go ahead and strike the FTC and then have them pay it. Versus if it's just an FTA, I'll say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Either way, we should strike it. Yeah. But the FTC, I go ahead and strike before they pay it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So just a little, thing that I do now that I've learned my mistakes on. For sure.
Well, Jennifer, I think, kind of the place that I'd like to maybe get your thoughts on as we kind of come to a close here is really given all of these like changes that we're dealing with, especially maybe on the e-courts front. But obviously there's a lot of moving pieces in the criminal defense world. And so I think being on a united front is extremely helpful. And you talked earlier about how important it is to kind of be a part of the local bar in any county that you practiced in. What are some ideas that we could use to actually improve the criminal defense bar at the local level?
I think not just local, but I think the Mecklenburg Defense Bar, we have a great email. I think all of us, I think although I had talked about this previously, that the public defender's office in Mecklenburg has a great rapport with the criminal defense bar in Mecklenburg. All of them work together. I think that is wonderful. When Iredell was talking about getting a public defender's office, some of the private defense bar was reluctant. And I said, why are you reluctant? Do not be reluctant. It said, the Mecklenburg Public Defender's Office and the Mecklenburg, private defense bar work so well together because what happens is you're creating such a strong bond and you're making the MEC, DA's office try cases more and more and more. And what happens is they're going to get tired. And they're going to say, you know what, we don't want to do this and we don't want to do that. And what it creates is it creates a system that is better for all defendants. It is a better criminal defense bar entirely. It doesn't matter if you're private. It doesn't matter if you're appointed. It doesn't matter. What you are doing is you're creating a better defense bar for defendants. It's not about whether you're making money or not making money, if you're appointed, if you're in the public defender's office. What we all are here for is having excellent representation and actually defending our clients and the Constitution. And that is the core of what we do. And I don't think about how much money I make. I've never thought about that. That's not what I think about. I think about every day when I get up that I'm here to protect the Constitution. I'm here to protect this person's rights and ensure that their rights are protected. And so if this attorney next to me is fighting for somebody's rights and them doing that is helping me on my case, of course I want them to do that. Yeah. And do you know that for years I was on the court appointed in Mecklenburg and I could go up to any attorney. I don't care if it was George Lauren. Love George Lauren. I don't care who it was, Thomas Porter, Michael Green. And Michael Green, I still owe money. I don't want to admit that. He said when I was at the PD's office in Beck, he said, "You're going to pay me for that." And I was like, but it doesn't matter who you work for, or how much money you make, or if you're appointed, whatever the case is. We don't care about what case it is or who defendant it is. What we care about is we're going to help you.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Do you know that since I've been in the Iredell bar, I always lend a hand. I always say to somebody, "Oh, what is your case about?" And if it's a null motion or if it's PC, I'll ask, "What is it about?" I might have case law. What is that about? I want to help you, because if you do a great job, guess what? The DA might not want to do the case next time.
Yeah.
And what you're creating is a better system.
100%.
And the DAs are going to be less likely to try cases that are weak cases if you keep trying the cases. But we got to keep trying cases, and we got to hold their feet to the fire, and we're not. And I'll say that, Mecklenburg has been doing that for years, and we've got to get better about in these other counties doing it. And I do it. I will I'll take a trial. I'll take a trial. I'll take a trial. And I used to be reluctant about doing that in these other counties. And, I'm going to lose because we know that there's politics, and I'm going to lose. It's not fair. But you got to keep trying.
Yeah.
And the more of us that help each other out, the better it will be, the better the system will get, the better it will get for people. And that's what we're really about, is helping the people, ensuring that constitutional rights are protected. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's not about, "Oh, I want this case or I want that case. I want to make the money off this." I never thought about it that way. And I think if you're thinking about it that way, maybe you're in the wrong field. Maybe that's not for you. We are here. If I look at somebody and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm about to go to trial and I don't know anything about this," I literally will feed them whatever I can.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm here to do. It's not about us being competition. It's about us being able to support one another, because it's about the person at the table next to them.
Yeah, 100%.
And that person at the table next to them is going to impact the person next to you at the table when you're up in front of the judge next time. And you got to be able to realize that that's going to happen, and that we got to be stronger about this. We've got to stop being so small-minded and start thinking bigger. And when we need help, reach out, because I always do. I've got to put some names out there. Will Cathcart is one that is incredible. He knows, he's just mind blowing. He knows statutes. Like, you'll ask him case law, he knows case law. I sometimes want him to just cite the case law, like like with the year. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do it. But he's incredible. But I can reach out to these people. David Driscoll when it comes to DMV.
Oh yeah.
I literally, and Kristen Dewar, for instance, the other day I could not. I was stumbling on the driving, and I could not think of the name. And she's like, Kraft, and I was like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to text people.
Yeah.
And say, you know what, I'm having this brain fart. Can you tell me what it is?
Yeah.
Because no emotions, anything, you should be able to say, what's that case? Can you help me? Or I've never had an argument on this. Can you help me? And us help one another.
Yeah.
And we need to be strong for that. And
yeah, I think that there's such a amazing, I would just speak from like my own experience in terms of locally Buncombe County Defense Bar, the interplay between, the public defender's office here in Buncombe County and the private defense bar is so healthy and, creates, just such a amazing, again, kind of united front, because you're just seeing things from different perspectives. Like, I mean, you're definitely like kind of looking at some of the same problems from a different perspective. It's impossible, or not impossible, but it's really difficult to have something like a sobriety court without having a public defender's office. Like, it just is very difficult to kind of get those type of, veterans treatment court, whatever it might be, off the ground without having that kind of like internal support. There's just a different vantage point on how cases are getting moved through the system based on, just those, two different kind of, vantage points of the case. So locally, I mean, we've got just an incredible group of lawyers at the public defender's office here in Buncombe County, very active in like our local bar meetings. And it's been for, as long as I practiced here, that's, always been kind of part of the system. So I'm just kind of used to that, but it's been a tremendously powerful part of the Buncombe County Defense Bar's voice. And I think that a lot of, bars where this is getting ready to kind of occur are going to benefit from that long term.
And I think that the email is central, that you have an email where people feel comfortable basically going, okay, this is a question. Can I get help? I would love to see us do one that is centralized, even if it's regional. I would love to have one for criminal defense bar. And it may be, I don't know how many people listen to this. It may be related to officers and judges. I don't know why we would need information on officers and judges, but if we did, that we could email each other, instead of texting, because we only have certain people's, numbers. But, not that we would need information on judges and officers, but if we did, that would be available. Just saying, that's something I thought about that would be wonderful to have. Just because some insight into, arguments that are accepted more by certain people is very important.
It is, yeah.
And so I think that would be valuable for us to have, but also, just to reach out and just say, hey, I've got this argument. Has anybody had an argument like this before? Do you have cases that, you think would help? I think that is an amazing thing to do. And I love being able to just ask people. And, even if I've had the same argument like 100 times, I always like talking to other people and kind of going, okay, let me throw this out there. And do you have any ideas that you think will work? I think that's wonderful. And that is what I've always loved about the criminal defense bar. And I love about criminal defense, period. I love all my people.
Yeah,
Because
100%.
I got to represent because I talk to family law attorneys and I'm like, oh my God, you guys are so mean.
Yeah, they are. Oh, it's
So
it's
mean
the
to each
worst.
other.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I was like, I could be mean to DAs, but I
Yeah.
can't be, oh no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you guys are so mean. But yeah, that's the thing. I feel like we all have this, like you said, the united front of, I'm here to protect the Constitution. I'm here to protect my clients' rights. And that's something that I believe strongly in. And it's exciting for us to all get together and be able to help one another. And that's amazing to me.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, I think that is such a beautiful part of being a criminal defense lawyer is just the camaraderie that exists in that bar. I've talked a number of times on the podcast about, my brief dabbling in civil litigation that was just awful. I mean, it was just like the most
Yeah.
miserable work. And again, I feel like there's definitely huge reason to feel blessed in terms of criminal defense practice because you just get to work with such great other criminal defense lawyers, which is a blast. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love
And you're
that.
actually like when you go to, have you ever gone to CLEs with like other types of attorneys?
I mean, honestly,
So
not really.
boring.
I mean, so,
Oh my God. I can't speak
I
with
mean, I'm
who
sure I did in the
I've
first
gone
year of
with, but
practice, but I was just trying to like keep my head above water, but like, I
oh
mean,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
since then it's been all criminal defense. So
And then it's fun, right? You like,
yeah.
like I've been to a couple, I can't speak of which ones,
Yeah.
but I'm just gonna say we are definitely the fun ones. Like,
That's,
hands down, always fun.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I've gone to what is it, NACDL and then NCAJ, all of those
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also say IDS. I love IDS, their resources,
They're great.
and
Yeah.
they have
100%.
experts, you guys,
Yeah.
experts out there, blood experts, for point oh 0.08 experts, stuff like that. I can't remember her name, but Kristen Dewar knows them. But they have experts if you need experts for
Yeah.
cases,
Yeah.
to reach out to too. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Sarah Olson has shared a couple of
that's it.
times. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I can't think
Yeah.
of her name.
Yeah. She shared, uh, some amazing resources that are on that website, and it's yeah, I mean, I feel like since day one I downloaded the public defender manual,
In the
and
motions, I
yeah, and
love
the
the motions.
motions
I'm
are
like, okay,
great.
let me
They've
steal
got a
all
great
their
motions bank.
motions.
It's a great place to
Yeah, if
get
anybody
resource.
needs motions,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
great resource. But yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I got to say that the criminal defense bar is like the best. We're like the most exciting people, most interesting and intriguing people ever. So
I'm I'm 100% on board. So yeah, I can't agree more. It's just a
next
fun
time
group.
we get wings
Yes.
and tofu wings hot, and
Yes.
then whoever can eat the most hot wings
This
is
is
the
this is definitely going to have to be like
hottest.
real time deal. We could do it in person, but I feel like doing it podcast, over the podcast would be fun as well, just because, I mean, you'd be trying
Now,
to
is this going to
talk,
be beer or liquor?
but mixture of both.
Okay, both. I can do both. I am from Asheville,
That's
so
right. That's right.
and I'm Irish, so
That's
so
on the
it
heels of
has
St.
been
Patrick's Day.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was definitely out for that.
Well, Jennifer, I appreciate very much you coming on and sharing your
Thank
wisdom
you.
with the audience. I mean, it really is, I think, always so powerful to have somebody that is really going to war for clients, and I know you are, and so that's just such a. I feel like sometimes we just need inspiration to go into the courtroom and kick some doors down and shake, ruffle some people's feathers and have a blast while we're doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.